So when it comes to a brand new issue, do you buy multiple variants or do you just buy the one variant that you enjoy most and just stick with that one copy? What's going on, everybody? Justin here, aka No Good Comics, and welcome back to the channel. I am doing something a little different here and talking to you about a question that I asked from my top 5 picks from last video. So my video that I streamed on Thursday, my premiered video. In that video, I asked a question, and I had a bunch of people answer that question in the comment section, and so many answers that came through that I actually wanted to make a separate video for it because there were just so many answers and I wanted to read off a lot of them and kind of hear your opinions, those who had left answers in that comment section. So it's something I've been trying to do now, just asking a new question. And I was not expecting as many comments as I got in the last one. So thank you to everyone who left a comment. And so again, if you're not familiar with what the question was, here it is. The question was, do you buy multiple copies of a single issue or do you just stick to one copy no matter what cover that you buy? So, this is definitely something that I think we talk about a lot in the comic book community. Some of us will, we recognize Marvel and DC, especially the big two, coming out with like multiple variants of a brand new issue that comes out, right? We deal with this every week. Certainly a cash grab for sure from these companies. But also I think there's some plus sides to it as well in terms of allowing, providing work for some of the artists and giving, artists a shot on showing some of their work for some of these covers. I was just curious kind of to see what some of you, how you guys approach this ultimately, because here's the other thing. It definitely can get a little pricey, right? When it comes to buying a brand new issue that just comes out. Let's just say, X-Men 1 just comes out and there's, 8 or 9 different covers for it. Obviously I want one of them just to be able to read it or enjoy it. But then of course there's all these other cool covers that come along with it. And so sometimes, at least in my opinion, it feels bad knowing if I buy 3 versions of one copy or one issue, I should say, and all because of a cover, right? And I'm very guilty of cover buys, right? I talk about it in my top 5 videos. I always ask the question, like, what's your cover buy of the week? Because I have a cover buy of the week where I can't help it. I want to own this particular, book just based on the cover itself, and hopefully it's something I'm also reading. So, I'm just kind of curious how people approach that. And again, this is, different for everybody, and everybody's situation is different. But I wanted to kind of go over some of the answers because I think there are some really great ones. So before I do that, smash the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about with these the top 5 videos that I've been doing, they come out every Thursday, 12:30 Eastern. They come out as a premiered video, so you can kind of catch it as a kind of a live stream premiered video. And there's a bunch of people who hang out there, so it's a lot of fun on a Thursday, around noonish. Usually I'm going to ask a question the first time. And again, this is new. So the first time around, I asked this or that question. This time now I'm asking about, how many copies do you buy of a certain book? It's going to change up. This next one coming up this Thursday, I'll have a new question, so keep an eye out for that as well. But let's get into some of these questions. I'm going to read some of these off and, talk a little bit about them. All right, so the first one I'm going to put up here is by Paul Bowler. He says, I rarely, if ever, get variant covers these days. There's just too many sometimes, and it's expensive. I did treat myself to a couple Gunslinger Spawn issue number 1 variants last year, though, as they looked so cool. Paul, I totally hear you, man. And it's like, I personally have been trying to cut back, just generally speaking on, if you follow me over on Instagram, I try to stick to like 3 books. I've been pretty good about it, occasionally going to a 4th or 5th book. And when I say 3 books, I mean like overall, like I just 3 physical books. What am I buying? The rest I buy digitally, right? So I try to read mostly on digital platforms nowadays. So, but of course there are books that I just want to absolutely own. I want to have as part of my personal collection, my PC. So I get this, trying to step away from doing that so much. But wanna, like you mentioned, Gunslinger Spawn issue number 1, when there's something that is just like, it speaks to you and you're like, man, I gotta have it. Like I totally get that. So thank you, Paul, for sharing. The next one here I want to get into is Brett Hess Art says, I buy variants if it's a bigger book or just great art, but usually it's cover A. Looking forward to the Ocean Will Take Us, issue number 1 from Aftershock this week. Great point there, Brett. First of all, I saw that Ocean Will Take Us. That definitely looks interesting. Aftershock always killing it. And he says, he's buying variants. If it's a bigger book. So yeah, I think a lot of it depends on kind of your own definition of what are the notables that kind of cross off your list of like, okay, if this book consists of XYZ, then I will buy it, meaning maybe it's a key, or maybe it's just a really great read, or maybe it is the artwork itself, maybe it's the artist and you're just I want to own everything by this XYZ artist. So I totally get that. And I find myself doing the same thing. So yeah, you're not alone there. But generally, he mentions cover A. I have been a fan of cover A's, and I've also noticed that like if there is a book to blow up, right, of a issue 1 or some sort of key or something like that, I've noticed a lot of the times. Again, just kind of from what I've been, seeing over this past couple of years of being a collector and a reader of this hobby, is that cover A's are usually the more popular book to have or to own. But at least, I know there are different cases or various cases, but generally speaking, I think cover A's are they end up being the book that kind of blow up. The next one here I want to talk about is BDG Comics. He says, I only buy singles unless I think there's a huge speculation or key on the book. Then I'll buy one to keep and one to sell. The books I picked up more than one of recently: ASM 88, Avengers 53, Black Panther issue number 3, King Conan number 3, and ASM 93, the Gleason variant. And in all cases, I only picked up 2 copies. He goes on to say, the cover I'm looking forward to the most also happens to be the issue I'm looking forward to the most, She-Hulk issue number 3, Carnage Forever. So, all right, couple things there. I'll touch on the last part first, where you talked about for looking forward to this week. That's really convenient that the book that you're looking forward to in terms of the cover is also a book that you're looking forward to just most in general to read. So that always falls in place nicely. And as I mentioned before, from the first part that you mentioned here, it sounds like you have that kind of checklist, right? Where it's like, okay, if it consists of a first appearance, if it's an artist I like, if it's a character that I really appreciate, then, things like that, like, and we're all going to have different checklists, right? In order to determine if I want to have multiple copies or at least, as you mentioned here, like one copy to keep, one copy to sell. Totally get that. I too, when I was first collecting, I was doing a lot of that as well. The funny part for me is that I don't sell books. And I thought I would be able to get there one day and sell books, but I just don't, because it's just not in it for me. I can't get myself together to do it. It obviously takes a lot of time and energy, and just not something that I'm trying to do with the hobby right now. But not to knock anybody who does sell. I mean, it definitely is a great way to go in terms of, replenishing your collection and being able to reach for bigger or more expensive books, as some people say, like kind of funding the hobby. So I definitely know that I've heard a lot of people talk about this kind of strategy of buying one to read or keep and the other one to kind of sell down the road. So BDG, I really appreciate you leaving this comment there. And those are some great books that you listed as well. Let's see. The next one is Mark Robinson, my man Mark. He says, so I find myself purchasing some variants now. In the 90s, I knew it was a money grab, and it was part of the reason why I stopped collecting. Now, that's interesting because, I could totally see like when I first got into this hobby, like I definitely was just like reaching for everything, right? Like just trying to own everything, trying to explore, see what I was into and things like that. And to some degree, like you have to do that to like, learn what you're into. But on the other side of it, it's very easy to get carried away. It's very easy to kind of lose sight of your budget if you're even budgeting. I've definitely spent way too much money on books that I don't necessarily care about, and I've been in that situation. And even to this day, I'm still guilty of occasionally doing that. And it's just something I try to be more cautious about each and every time I step foot into my local LCS, trying to just narrow it down to the books that really mean something the most to me. But yeah, so I think that's, as you mentioned here, the whole variant blow up and being a cash grab or money grab, being a part of the reason why you stopped collecting. I totally understand that, because I've heard people talk about this where it's like, it feels like it's annoying, or so many companies are putting out so many books now, and we as collectors, we feel obligated, right, to own these books or to buy these books. And but at the same token, it's like no one's making us do this, right? No one's putting a gun to our head, or anything like that. So it's kind of considering all things when it comes to this topic. I'm going to continue here. Mark says also, now when I see certain covers on Mutant Beaver Comics or other sites, I do purchase them. For instance, on this current Hulk run, I've purchased 4 out of the 6 variant covers, and when I start slabbing, I will slab these mostly virgin variants because they do look really cool, but I hate the extra cost because it doesn't always translate to the book being valuable. He says, I'm a collector, not a seller, but that doesn't mean that I don't want my collection to be as valuable as possible. Yes, I enjoy the hobby, and I want it to bear all fruit. I want it to bear fruit as well. I know that the comic companies are taking advantage of us a bit, but it also feels like they're creating this artificial value with the 1 in 10 incentives all the way through the 1 in 500 variants, along with the other variants. But this practice seems to be feeding LCSs and online stores as well. He says, unfortunately, variants are the only scarcity we collectors in the modern era will experience. The big two and the independent print off too many issues because they're in the business for selling as many books as possible. Variants are here to stay until some other scheme is hatched. So definitely a lot of different points there, for sure, Mark. But I hear you. I mean, it feels like a lot. It does. But going back to my point of like, no one's forcing us to buy these books, right? I mean, they're putting them on the shelves, and if we as collectors just don't buy them, then eventually these companies will have to adjust. The problem is there are people out there that want to pay money for these. They want to own these books. So it just, as a business standpoint, it just makes sense. It's like, if I create this thing and I know people want more of it, I'm gonna keep doing it if there's a demand there, right? So obviously a lot goes into it from a business standpoint, but I get your side too of like, it definitely can be a turnoff, right? Seeing all these different variants. I remember like Fantastic Four issue number 1 by Dan Slott, when that came out. I feel like there was like literally, it was like cover A through like M or something like that. So insane amount of covers. And then of course you get like your reprints and your store variants and online variants and things like that on top of everything else. So it does get crazy for sure. I think a lot of that, the approach is to just kind of, focus down on what it is that means most to you, things that you personally just want in your collection, regardless of kind of what they might be worth at some point later on, or whatever the case may be. I will say for me, like if there is a cover that I'm into and I'm buying it, I am buying it because I just genuinely want that artwork as part of my collection. And again, this is me personally, like there's never a time that crosses my mind of like, okay, I think that this artwork or variant can be worth something more or anything like that. It's to me, it doesn't cross my mind in that sense. It's just because I genuinely think that artwork is beautiful and I just want to have it. If I'm looking to quote unquote invest, then I might look more into actual what the point of the book is, if it's like a first appearance or something significant that happens to the book, things like that. But even that, I'm not really, in the market for. I'm just buying things that I really enjoy, generally speaking. But again, that's all kind of my take on it, my perspective. But Mark, this was an awesome comment, so I appreciate your input here for sure. Let's see, a couple others here. Phil, Comic Talk Weekly, thanks for leaving a comment here, Phil. He says, though I'm cutting way back, I'll buy variants of books I'm a big fan of the series. Most books I'm cover A only. Others, it's pick my one favorite. And for just a few, like Little Monsters or Descender before it, it's master set time. Okay, so that's interesting too. Yeah, I mean, I'm all on board with like, if there is a series that's come out and I read issue 1, I fall in love with it, right? Or if if there's a trade that came out and maybe I wasn't collecting it at first and I just read into the trade, or heck, even if it's something older, right? Just something that maybe came out 5 years ago or whatever, still in the modern time with variants and stuff, but maybe I just wasn't collecting at that time. If I go back and read that and I fall in love with it, I want to own I feel it makes me want to own everything, right? Like I want to own the cover A's for sure. If there's a really cool variant, I want to own those too. I will say I've been trying to really focus if I am collecting like runs, like he mentions, Little Monsters, like I want to own every cover A. And that's definitely, a big part is because of Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen being my favorite my modern comic book creative team. I want to own like anything that they put out. So them working on this project, that is something where I absolutely want every cover A, and then I'll see about cover Bs. If there's something else, or any other whatever other incentives or anything that may come down the road. But for me, cover A for sure. And yeah, so that's really cool though. I mean, like you said, if you're a big fan of the series, or you're a big fan of the artist, or you're a big fan of the writer, or you're just a big fan of the character itself, then yeah, I think again, going back to creating that mental checklist of like, does this have all the requirements that are needed for me to be able to justify and say, okay, I'm going to spend money on this variant. This is another way to kind of look at that, or have your own list. So, Phil, thank you for that comment. Speaking of Phil, we have another Philly Phil. What's going on, Philly Phil? Appreciate you leaving this comment as well. He says, I've learned over time that cover A is the way. He says, I'm still a sucker for certain artists that do variants, like Zoo Orzu, Jenny Frizen, Marco Andolfo, Tua Latoy. Says just for the PC. Let's see. He says, even if you are speculating, the A cover seems to always hold the truest and most value. Yeah, that's what I mentioned a little earlier, right? Like I've noticed, and again, there are some exceptions for sure, but for the most part, I feel like it's those cover A's that are most iconic, or most recognizable, most talked about, and as Phil's mentioning here, kind of hold their value more so than anything else. So let's see, he goes on to say, but it's a subjective matter, so to each their own, geek responsibly. Yeah, 100%. Well said, and way to wrap that up for sure. I'm here with you, Philly Phil. He says I'm a sucker. Like me too, man. Like I'm still like Jenny Frizen, like all day. I'll just buy anything that she puts out because it's so her artwork speaks to me in a way that I love it. I have to have it. I want it in my collection. I don't care if it's worth a penny 10 years from now. I'm not planning to get rid of it. I don't, I'm keeping it for myself. And that's why I want it. So, yeah, I totally get that. He's named some other great ones here too. So, but yeah, otherwise, yeah, cover A's. I'm trying to stick to those cover A's too. Let's see. Going into the next one, my man Copy 801. He says, I buy whatever cover I like for the given issue. There are a few exceptions. Catwoman picking up all the B covers, but only one copy of each issue. Dark Knights of Steel, another example, picking up all the D&D character variants in addition to whatever cover I like that week. Other than those, I will only be picking up one copy unless I really like the cover. He says, like what happened with the World's Finest Artgerm cover, LOL. So yeah, Copy, that's those great points as well. I think that, again, kind of going back to what I mentioned too with like Little Monsters, if that is I automatically want to cover A's, because it's Dustin Nguyen, right, doing the artwork for that. And then if there's some cool cover B's, like if Jeff Lemire does something that just kind of speaks to me, because I enjoy a lot of his work too. He does do like some of the cover B's or cover C's, things like that. Then I might also pick those up. It's good that you mentioned the Catwoman stuff, because yeah, I find myself buying more of those covers as well because of the artwork there too. I also noticed those D&D covers; they look really cool from the Dark Knights of Steel, and I've been buying the cover A's of that. So, but yeah, so I like how you kind of had set these rules up for at least certain series, obviously based on because you're enjoying these series or you're enjoying these characters, or the artwork or whatever the case is. And so you set this rule, and I think that works out great. And it's, as you stated here, it's not for every single series; it's just for certain ones. So, I think that again, so that so we don't, to make sure that we don't get carried away, I do think we have to kind of put some of these mental check marks in place as to like, obviously we can't own everything, right? Because if we did, where would we put it? But if we had to choose certain things or prioritize in a certain way, then I think we make this list, this criteria of like what needs to be involved in order for me to have this or want to buy this this variant or this cover or this copy or this issue multiple times. So Copy 801, thank you for that. Another one here is Sove Collector says, I strictly buy cover A's only. Even if cover B is a better cover, I like to keep my runs clean and in order. Probably qualifies me for OCD. Yeah, so I mean, so dude, I mean, as we've been saying, right? Like I mean, I definitely get the cover A thing, and again, any series that I'm like really into and I'm buying from the start, I want to own the cover A regardless. And then yes, if there's a cover B that speaks to me, then I might still buy it. I might still buy it. It seems like you're doing good in terms of, you keep your control, because and it makes sense because it's like you're keeping it organized in the way that you view it as organized and want it to be. So you don't want necessarily cover B's mixing in with your cover A. So I totally get that. So thank you for the comment there. Let's see. Flash by Night, my man Flash, he says, I'm mostly a one cover guy, but every once in a while I'll get multiple of the right book, aka Moon Knight. Anyway, watching the rewind. Flash, thank you first of all, leaving a comment. Second of all, for watching the replay. I always appreciate that as well. And yeah, clearly as we've been covering this, like, yeah, you're mostly a one cover guy, which is yeah, I mean, for me it's tough. But yeah, you got to draw the line somewhere, and if you can keep it to one cover, that's awesome, man. Good for you, man. Whatever speaks to you most, I guess, right, is what you end up going with. And like you said, you do have some exceptions, so it's we're all in this together, right? Is what I'm seeing as a kind of a pattern here. Let's see, gonna go through just a couple more here, and then we'll wrap this up. Rick Ray, he had mentioned, he says, I will almost always buy cover A. The main reason I get a variant is because the main cover is out of stock and I can't find a copy. Yeah, that's valid. And like we were just talking about, yeah, cover A's, for sure. Rick, great comment there. And yeah, I guess that's what's good about the variants, right? Is, if the cover A's are sold out, at least hopefully you're hoping that there's another one there. So maybe it deters other people who weren't interested in that. So you can at least get the copy, right? So you can actually read the book. So I get that. Let's see, my man Paul, aka Back to Back Issues, he says, if it's one of my favorite characters or titles, I'll buy multiple covers if the covers are cool. Yeah, so that's, I mean, yeah, I'm right there with you, man. And I know he and I, we've been talking about the new Strange by Jed MacKay, some of that stuff coming out. I know issue 2's about to drop, and or at least from when I'm recording this, technically it's coming out tomorrow. Technically, I'm recording this on Tuesday. And so yeah, like I think I'm just going with cover A's for all that, and then there's a bunch of like cool cover B's from time to time. I'm gonna pick those up too, or incentives, or whatever the case is. So yeah, definitely gonna do that for that. I know X-Men Red is that has a couple of variants that are coming out right now, and I want to get cover A and the 1 in 50. So it fits into kind of what Paul's saying, like, the character, the title. I'm into X-Men. I'm excited for the new title, and the covers are cool. So I'm gonna go with them. So yeah, seems like I'm with you there. All right, one last answer that I will read off here, and it is by my good friend Gore Vidal. Thank you, Gore, for leaving a comment. He says, good day, Justin. I don't buy variants unless she's sexy and provocative. Otherwise, it's just one copy. Waiting for Tom King's run to finish, and then I'll buy them in a lot. He said he read Sean Murphy's Batman this morning. First-rate artist and writer. Enjoyed the issue. Oh, good to know. Good to know. Yeah, we talked about that in the last top 5 video that I had created. So yeah, again, Gore just kind of having some of those check points, right? Of if it's attracted to him, if it's something that he's attracted to, then he'll go with it. Otherwise, he just tries to stick to one cover, or one copy. So yeah, totally fair there. And yes, I'm with you with Tom King stuff. I am reading it issue by issue, but that's a great way to go about it. If you're okay with waiting, is to just wait and then buy those single issues as a lot. So a good deal there. So thank you for that comment, Gore. And to everybody who left a comment that was in regard to the question that I asked, appreciate everybody who was chiming in. And I'm going to keep doing this. I wasn't expecting to do a separate video for this because I was going to, keep it in my top 5s, but my top 5 videos, I want to kind of just keep it condensed to talking about the new books for the week. And I didn't want to necessarily bog down with some of these other topics, which are great topics. And I want to hear what everyone thinks of certain situations and kind of how they approach some of these situations, like the question that we asked today, or last week. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Would love to know your thoughts on the topic. I'd love to know your thoughts on how I'm doing this right now, because again, again, it was about a 20-minute video here, and like I said, my top fives. I want to keep kind of the length of time that I've been keeping them, and I don't want to necessarily extend them longer than they are. But yeah, would love to know your thoughts on any of this that we talked about here. And then, of course, as a reminder, my top 5 picks of New Comic Book Day coming out next week. That's going to be released this Thursday. So if you're watching this today, Wednesday, which is when you should be watching it, then be ready for Thursday at 12:30 Eastern. That's when the new top 5 video will be premiered. And I'll have a new question, so be ready for that. I'll have that towards the beginning of the video. If you're interested, leave a comment in the comment section of that top 5 video, and I'll include it here. I'll break some down. I'll read them through, and get some of your opinions and see where everybody stands with it. So, but anyways. Yeah, just trying this out, really, just trying to have fun with this. And again, this is a way to kind of help me learn, and hopefully can help other people learn as well when we're all approaching this comic book hobby. So, I don't think there's no wrong way to collect or to take on this hobby. It's to each their own, and we all have our different approaches. So, but I think this is a great way to kind of put it out there and talk about it. And so again, thank you to everybody who left a comment. I'm looking forward to next week's, and hope you can catch my top 5 video coming out tomorrow. Hope all of you are doing well. Smash that like button on the way out, and I will talk to you later.